are you, my dear students, my Vietnamians? Thank you very much for watching my videos and giving a good response. And also my Indian students who also watch my videos. Thank you, Indians, for watching my videos and giving me a very good response. Today we are going to discuss the basic concept of chemistry, that is the Arrhenius concept of acid and bases. Dear students, you know acid and bases are very important compounds in a chemistry, and these compounds were described by different scientists, and they gave their concepts for the acid and bases, and they defined acid and bases according to their ideas and theories. Like acid and bases were defined by Humphrey Davy, acid and bases were also defined by Arrhenius, acid and bases were defined by Lorien Bronsted, and similarly the last concept that was given by acid and bases, that was the Lewis concept. Today we are going to have an idea about the acid and bases as described by the Arrhenius. Arrhenius, you know, dear student, was a Swedish chemist, and he presented his idea about the acid and bases in 1787. He presented his idea about the acid and bases. Arrhenius concept of acid and bases was only limited for those substances that contain hydrogen ions and hydroxide ions, and similarly this concept was based only for those compounds which are soluble in water, means the aqueous medium was required to prove that either they are acid or bases substances. So now we can have a detail about the Arrhenius concept. Arrhenius defined acids are those substances which provide hydrogen ions in aqueous solutions. Those substances, when dissolved in water, they always produce hydrogen ions. As I told earlier, that aqueous medium was required to prove that either they are acid or bases. Like HCl, according to Arrhenius concept, was an acid. Similarly, HNO3 was an acid, and sulfuric acid was also an acid according to Arrhenius concept. The general reaction for the Arrhenius concept can be given as any compound. It can be when dissolved in water, it always produces hydrogen ions, and a negative radical or a ion can be produced during this reaction. And similarly, when we take some examples of these acids, so we can take nitric acid. Nitric acid, when dissolved in water, it in a reversible reaction, it will produce nitric acid will produce these hydrogen ions, and it will also produce nitrate ions. Similarly, when HCl is dissolved in water, it will produce hydrogen ions and chloride ions. Similarly, when sulfuric acid is dissolved in water, it will give 2 hydrogen ions and sulfate ions. This proves that those substances which are dissolved in water, and when dissolved in water, they give hydrogen ions, either one hydrogen ion or more than one hydrogen ions. They are acids. One thing more about the Arrhenius concept, dear students, we can say that the other idea about the acids that was presented by Arrhenius was that acids, when dissolved in water, they produce a hydronium ion. Hydronium ions formula is H3O positive. It means they when acids are dissolved in water, they give hydrogen ions. And similarly, when they dissolve in water, they can also produce hydronium ion. How they can produce? We can have an equation to prove that how they can produce hydronium ion. When HCl is dissolved in water, the hydrogen ions that is present in hydrochloric acid will be added to H2O, and H2O will become H3O, because H positive is present, positive charge is present on hydrogen ion. Whole of the H3O positive will get a positive ion, and this will be known as a hydronium ion, and along with the hydronium ion, the negative ion will be produced. So now we can say that when acids are dissolved in water, they also produce a hydronium ion and a negative ion. Hydronium ion production also shows that HCl is an acid because it has produced H positive ions, and H positive ions was taken by water to produce a hydronium ion. So acids can be defined by two ways. One way is when acids are dissolved in water, they produce hydrogen ions, okay, and the other definition can be when acids are dissolved in water, according to Arrhenius concept, when acids are dissolved in water, they produce a hydronium ion. So in this way, we can have two definitions for the acid according to Arrhenius concept. Now we'll discuss about the bases. What are the bases, dear student? Those substances which produce hydroxide ions, OH negative, also known as hydroxyl ions, in aqueous solution, means when bases are dissolved in water, what they will produce? They will produce hydroxide ions or hydroxyl ions. Those substances are generally known as bases. General examples for the bases are NaOH, sodium hydroxide, KOH, potassium hydroxide, and CaOH twice, calcium hydroxide. When we write the general reaction for this, how we can write the general reaction for this? We can have that whenever the metal, whenever a base is dissolved in water, it will produce what it will produce? It will produce hydroxide ions. Like we have a BOH, any compound, when it dissolved in water in a reversible reaction, what it will produce? It will produce OH negative ions, and a B will contain a positive charge. It will be a positive ion and OH will be a negative ion. So those compounds which produce OH when dissolved in water are known as bases according to Arrhenius concept. Now we can have general examples. NaOH when dissolved in water, H2O, what it will give? It will produce sodium ions and hydroxide ions. Similarly, when KOH dissolved in water, what will produce? It will produce potassium ions and hydroxide ions. Similarly, when calcium hydroxide dissolved in water, what will produce? It will produce calcium ions and 2 hydroxide ions. So these reactions show that those compound that like NaOH, KOH and CaOH twice, which contain OH ions in their molecules, are known as bases according to Arrhenius concept. Hopefully you will have an idea about the acids and bases according to Arrhenius concept. Dear students, the question is usually asked, what are the limitations of the Arrhenius concept of acid and bases? So there are two limitations for this concept. This concept is restricted to those compounds which are soluble in water. As I told earlier in the intro, that this concept was focused for those compounds which are soluble in water, means they required an aqueous medium to prove that either they are acid or a base. Similarly, the second limitation of this concept is this limited to those acids which have H positive ions. This concept is not for those acids which don't have a H positive ions. Like CO2 is a acidic gas, it is a acidic compounds, but it don't have a H positive ions. For CO2, there is no explanation in Arrhenius concept that why it is an acid. Similarly, this concept is based for those compounds, those bases which have OH negative ions, mean hydroxide ions. And this concept doesn't give an idea about those bases which don't have OH negative ions, like ammonia gas. Ammonia gas is a basic gas, but according to Arrhenius concept, there is no classification of ammonia either as an acid or a base, because it don't have either H positive ions or a OH negative ions. These are the two limitations which are in the Arrhenius concept. Otherwise, this concept has a vast application. It was widely accepted. Only these two limitations were present in this concept. Now we have a summary of this concept. The summary of this concept is acids are those substances which produce hydrogen ions when dissolved in water, or hydronium ion when dissolved in water. Bases are those compounds which give hydroxide ions or hydroxyl ions when dissolved in water. Limitations, two limitations. First limitation is this concept is limited to those compounds which have hydrogen and hydroxide ions, and this concept doesn't explain the nature of those acid and bases which don't have hydrogen and hydroxide ions. And the second limitation, as I discussed earlier, that this concept is only for the aqueous medium. When the substances will dissolve in aqueous medium, they will be proved either acid or bases, and this is not for those acid and bases which are insoluble in water. It doesn't explain their nature, either they are acid or bases. Hopefully you have got an idea, dear students. Thank you Vietnamians, and thank you Indians for watching my videos. Please like, share, subscribe, and remember me in your prayers. Till next video, Allah Hafiz. Take care of yourself.